Yeah, it's really nice to see so many people know each other. This is, I think, we're not going to have to ask people to network at the end of the program. The speech I'm going to give you this morning is one of my most popular speeches because it's not very long. Those are usually the best ones, but I'd really like to say good morning and welcome to all of you here. I'm Richard Burns, the President and CEO of the NHP Foundation. We're a nonprofit housing developer, affordable housing developer with 39 properties in 14 states in the District of Columbia. But our headquarters are in New York City, and we're especially proud of the two faith-based housing joint ventures we have here and several more that we're considering. And this is a very important part of our future business, and it really was a motivating factor to join in with the other sponsors to create this morning. We're about to start our fourth joint venture with a faith-based partner. Each of them, these religious organizations, own vacant land adjacent to their tabernacle. They chose to partner with us or people like us because of our development experience, financial strength, shared mission, and goals. Now, they all had started out with an array of needs, concerns, and fears, and I think that that is pretty typical of the organizations we've met at the front end of their decision-making process. It's our hope today that today's panel on faith-based partnerships will be a learning experience to you. Some of you probably know a lot about this. Others of you are looking at it for the first time or curious about what goes on. I'm sure that all of us share the belief that when it's done right, these partnerships can not only house our community safely and affordably, but they also increase the number of affordable units that are desperately needed in this city. So the endeavor is sort of a win-win, I think, in that regard. The NHP Foundation is pleased to be hosting this event with our terrific partners, Friedman LLP, Goldstein Hall, and Chase Bank, each of whom is expert in finding solutions to affordable housing. And I think our moderator will get into introducing each of the panelists. The good news is I'm not going to have to give the invocation. The even better news is we have two reverends here today that are going to do that, Reverend Karim Kamara and Minister Richard Smith. And if you would come up and give an invocation, that would be great.
We come before you today, we call you by many names, we worship you from the perspective of many traditions. We're asking you to put your wisdom in this room today as we come forth with such an important topic as affordable housing. And let us remember those people that are in need of affordable housing, and let our minds come together to come up with creative solutions how we can better serve people in our respective areas. And we ask right now that God grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and give us the wisdom to know the difference between the two. We ask these things in your name this morning.
Lord, we thank you for your continued goodness and your continued protection over those in attendance. Lord God, hear those here who are assembled this morning, O Lord. We thank you for their continued wisdom and leadership in the area of affordable housing. We reject the prevailing notion that this wonderful city will only be represented by those of the haves and not by those of the have-nots. We reject the idea that we are powerless and that we don't have a voice. We know we need critically needed affordable housing in every area of this city, while it is sometimes being systematically stripped away. We do have a voice. We do have a place at the table. We can make a difference. We thank you for these wonderful pastors and leaders who are in attendance today. We thank you for the hearts of service towards an equitable and a fair housing environment in New York. Your word declares that you can make the crooked path straight. Bless us today as we seek innovative solutions to the affordable housing crisis in New York City. Amen.
Thank you, both of you, for those great remarks. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Charlie Herman. Charlie is the business and culture editor for WNYC Radio. He oversees the newsroom's housing and economic development reporting, which includes affordable housing, in which he has a strong interest. He is also a host of the station's popular weekly show, Money Talking. Charlie?
Good morning. Like Dick said, this is going to be a discussion to look at faith-based affordable housing in New York City, and in particular, that the fact that some of the city's largest landowners have this land available to possibly build affordable housing, and a lot of them are churches and synagogues and other faith-based organizations. Yet how to go about doing this, what the best practices are, how to create successful housing, equitable partnerships that benefit not only the organization themselves, but also the developers is the hope of what we can try and go through here today, provide information for people, and shed some light on how to go about doing this and bringing more affordable housing to New York City. I just want to take a moment to introduce the panel. On my left is the Honorable Kareem Kamara. He is a minister, motivational speaker, and life coach. He's also the executive director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based Community Development Services. He is a pastor of the Abundant Life Church in Brooklyn. He also served as an assemblyman in Albany from 2005 to 2015. He represented parts of Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Prospect Lefferts, and East Flatbush. He also served 2 terms as the chairman of the New York State Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus. And look out, because he was one of the state's top 100 most powerful people. So, I think it carries. I think you're still a member. Mike Greenwald is a partner at the law firm Friedman, where he is the leader of the corporate business and tax practice. He has over 30 years of experience in public accounting with clients in a variety of different industries, including real estate, construction, and professional services. Brian Chu is a partner at Goldstein Hall. He specializes in affordable housing development, banking, cooperative and condominium law, real estate finance. He also has a lot of experience with tax-exempt bonds, federal low-income housing tax credits, LIHTCs, HUD, and New York State and New York City programs. Nathan Sims is the Assistant Commissioner for New Construction at the city's Department of Housing and Preservation and Development, otherwise known as HPD. How long have you been in New York for now? 6 months. So he has a lot to oversee in the administration, development, and evaluation of multifamily new construction programs. He also oversees a variety of other programs at the department. You recently moved here from DC, where you were at HUD in various different departments and helped lead the municipal housing department there. Welcome to New York City. Thank you. Jamie Smarr leads the NHP Foundation affiliate program, and that works to seek joint ventures, joint partnerships with other nonprofits and community-based organizations to bring managerial strength, to bring finance and asset management, resident services, to partner in new projects to build the capacity out. He's also involved with the NHP's acquisition program, which works to acquire properties and partnership interests in portfolios of affordable housing. Prior to that, he had many years as the executive director of the city's Educational Construction Fund, which does public-private real estate development partnerships for the New York City school system. Richard Smith is the founder, president, and CEO of Temple Builders. It is a design build firm that specializes in the design, development, and modernization of houses of worship throughout the tri-state area, and he has been a lead project manager or an integral part of a team of management teams that have built over $600 million worth of projects. And then finally, David Walsh. He joined JP Morgan Chase in 2011 as the Northeast Regional Manager of Community Development Banking and has overseen the origination of over $3 billion in financing, resulting in the development or preservation of over 27,000 affordable and supportive housing units in the Northeast. And kind of, I was looking at everybody who's on the panel, and I thought, we have our banker, we have our builder, we have someone to help us create partnerships, someone from the city to explain how to go about doing this in the city. We have our attorney focusing on affordable housing. We have more law looking at the accountant issues, and then we have someone from the state, and we have 2 religious leaders here as well. So what kind of came across to me is I wanted to focus big picture on what are some of the issues at the state and the city, and then to kind of work through the process if you were a faith-based organization or if you're a developer looking to work with one, or if you are in financing, to sort of understand how the process works and what you should be aware of as you go through this process, which may not be as simple as I'm going to buy a piece of land and put up a housing there. So let me start with Nathan Sims and ask, the mayor has this goal of creating 300,000 new or preserved units of affordable housing. He's far along this path. He increased it from 200,000 to 300,000. How do faith-based organizations fit into the mayor's plan?
Sure. So if everybody can hear me okay? Okay. Good morning. So there, faith-based houses of worship, faith-based institutions have had a long, storied relationship with the city of New York. That is not going to change. I think, as was mentioned earlier, some of the biggest landowners in the city are faith-based institutions, and so that is good. The mayor has, as many of you know, had a housing plan. We are now on to Housing 2.0. So we were doing good enough that we extended out a little bit more. So we are to create and preserve 300,000 units by 2026. We're on a good pace. It's a lot of work, but as much capital as we may have, we need land to make it happen. As you all know, the city has a lot of land, and so we've done a lot of dispositions or a lot of solicitations, but we also accept a lot of private site development as well. And so we worked with many people in this room. I worked with everybody pretty much on this stage. So there's a lot of opportunity to be able to do that. The one thing we would like to let people know, and I think to your earlier point, was if you come to us and you say, I have a piece of land and I want to build on it, where's the financing? We're going to have like a million red flags. Okay, so a part of this process is really trying to educate yourself through this. This is a long game, not a short. You're not going to. No one was made rich in this room overnight. Or if you were, congratulations to you. But no one was made rich over this overnight, and this is a long-term strategy. And so, just as you have a responsibility to your congregation and to your community, we have the same in terms of the community as a whole. So we just need to make sure that the proper resources are in place, that you structurally need to be where you are to execute such a deal. Joint venture is not a dirty word. It is very helpful for a lot of different reasons. So we just want to make sure that people take advantage of the support that's out there to help get these deals done.
Are there any concerns in the department related to the change in the tax laws, and in terms of not only just credits that could be available, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but also the construction budget that was put in place in terms of tax revenues that the city is able to bring in and then use that going forward?
Well, I think we've been fortunate enough in a way. I think our annual capital budget for housing, which is probably the largest, I think, in the country, went from $1.3 billion annually to $1.9 billion. And so, but there are a lot of factors that impact that. So construction costs in the city continues to go up. Tax credits, I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but changes in the structure have impacted the way the pricing on tax credits. So while we have a lot of resources, there are a lot of things eating into those resources that are kind of beyond our control, even before we get to the transaction itself. So it's difficult, but we're managing our way through it.
Kareem Kamara, you're the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based Community Development Services. Can you give us a bit of insight in terms of how the state views the development of faith-based affordable housing in the city and beyond?
Sure. Well, it's been a huge priority for Governor Cuomo. When he created this office, that was one of the, not housing, community development overall. As you know, he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Bill Clinton and created this office 3 years ago to help faith leaders with the development process, particularly with affordable housing. Now, my role is the office I lead is in homes and community renewal, which is a state agency. I don't deal directly with the financing and the development, but my role is to go throughout the state and meet faith leaders who are interested in development. And so we look. The one thing that I would say is that right now, from my perspective, there are a lot of faith leaders who have the interest, they have the heart for it, they may have land, but they have no clue where to go, where to start. So they start with us, and we guide them through the process of getting funding. The one thing I'll say is, if you're a faith leader, you're someone affiliated with one, the number one thing is to find someone who's done it before. You can have a great piece of land, you can have a great plan, but when the state is looking to give out money for financing, the question is, does this person have the capacity to finish the project? And the best way to determine whether someone can do it is, have they done it? And so you have to find a developer who's done it before, preferably someone who's gone through the state process and has had state financing. And the other thing is to make sure is that there's someone, no pun intended, but who's a good faith actor, because we've heard some horror stories of faith leaders that have connected with developers, and they didn't read the fine print, they didn't have an attorney, and later on they're really disappointed and disillusioned in terms of what happened to them. We met with one pastor who had a piece of land. He's looking to develop it, and during the course of the conversation, he says, "Well, the property's worth $2 million." And I said, "Well, I've seen this property. It's in the neighborhood that I live in." I said, "Is it worth $2 million?" He said, "Yes, it's worth $2 million." I said, "Okay, so you had an evaluation done? Did you have an estimation of the value?" He said, "No, I didn't have that done." "Well, how do you know?" "Well, the developer I've been talking to, he told me it's worth $2 million. And so, of course, he's going to do that. And of course, that doesn't mean that all developers are bad or that even most of them are bad. It just means that you have to have someone to give you an objective analysis of the property. So I think those two things, make sure you know what you have first. Before you have a conversation with anyone, you should know what you have, how much what you have is worth, and then you should meet somebody who has done this before and who's going to help you through the process, not take advantage of you.
And so there is actual money available from the state in particular types of programs?
Yeah, see, I'm a menace. I get long-winded, don't answer the question that was asked. So I'm sorry.
Show me the money.
Right. Yes, there is money. The governor's committed $20 billion, both to affordable housing development and to cure things like homelessness, which, of course, we need people to develop buildings, in order to deal with the homeless crisis throughout the state. So there's money available. There's been a particular focus on veterans. There've been, in the last 12 months, at least 4 major properties throughout the state that were dedicated particularly for veterans. And so, yes, there is money out there. And the last thing in terms of that, the state has a very formal process, a unified funding process. And so you have to plan ahead and make sure that you don't think, okay, I've got this property, I want to get financing on it, and so 60 days later we can have some money coming in our direction. I would think in terms of not years and months, but years. We have this 2-year plan, we have this 3-year plan to create. But yes, Governor Cuomo has dedicated financing. There's plenty of financing available for affordable housing.
Does the state or the city, do you have a list? These are developers, these are financiers, these are people that we recommend you go to, or you're not going to go down that road for all sorts of reasons?
Right. I'll speak in terms of my office. We do not make recommendations or referrals. We have events where the people who've done affordable housing, we say they're a group of people here that you can talk to and decide what's best for you. But we would never say, we're going to recommend that you form a relationship with this developer. It's just not appropriate to us as a state agency, as a state office, and we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble, but we do let people know to go out and network, hear some key guidelines, and find a person who fits your particular project. So every project, there's somebody who can be better suited to help you what you're trying to do.
Nathan?
So from the standpoint of the city, I mean, it's almost the same way. We can't necessarily steer, but we do have a qualified or pre-qualified list of developers. But beyond that, I mean, it is about doing your research and networking and finding the right individuals that kind of meet the mission in terms of what you're trying to accomplish and have the experience of navigating not only city, but state resources as well.
Well, we do have a builder here. We have Richard Smith. And I'm a faith-based organization. I've heard what the representatives from the government have said, and I now want to do this. I want to build affordable housing. I'm thinking about doing it, but what do I need to know when I'm considering if it makes sense for me to do it?
Good morning, everyone. The number one word that continues to resonate within me is respect. Frankly, many of the deals that have been done have been disrespectful to the faith-based organizations. Frankly, it's critical that the church begin the process to find out, is this someone that understands me? Do they respect me? The word says that how can two walk together unless they be in agreement? And what we find over and over is that many developers, not all, I don't want to paint a wide swath, it's almost like, well, give me your land, what do you want, shut up. And that continues to pervade. And the second challenge to answer that question is explaining to the faith-based organizations that it's critical that they get proper legal representation and not their cousins, friends, sisters, brothers, nephew who just graduated law school last week. So for any faith-based leaders that are here, if an attorney says to you that his retainer is $250 to do a 50-unit development, that's the wrong attorney for you. So to answer the question, the very first thing is to meet many, many developers, get an independent appraisal so you understand the value, and then what is your mission as a church? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it because it's part of your mission to do affordable housing? Are you doing it because of just the blatant economics of it? Is there a necessity to do the deal? Meaning that there are some churches that they're not long for this world, based on they had a vibrant past, but now they're down to 10 members. So they're land rich and completely cash poor. That is a completely different situation to another church that might be sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars and can take years to go through the process of vetting various developers. So why are you doing this? And do your homework.
Are there, when you're looking at development partners, when you're talking to people, what should be on your wish list? What I know you mentioned respect, but are you also looking at previous track record, large finances? Do you go with a bigger firm versus a smaller one, nonprofit versus profit, for-profit? How does a faith-based organization make that decision?
There's no specific answer that addresses all of that. It's really about the individual entity, the developer that understands the need of the church and is willing to best suit that. So to give you a running start, several of the deals that we're involved in, the church that had owned the land for 100 or 200 years are now the tenant. And so I say to churches, at no time do you need to sell out to the extent where you're now just the tenant. Whether it's a 99-year net lease, it doesn't matter. There must be another construct, whether it's a condo split, whether it's a ground lease, whatever the other alternative is. If it means accepting less money to maintain some form of ownership in the land forever, that's really key. Too many deals where the developer flashes a lot of money, the churches take it, and ultimately they're the tenants. So those are some of the hot button issues that we really try to deal with to ensure that the church remains vibrant and in the community forever.
Jamie, with the work that you do at the NHP Foundation, can you take us through the steps and describe how a typical faith-based affordable housing deal would come together?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I want to give you a little insight into why the NHP Foundation actually seeks out faith-based partners. And I'll say I had a long career in city government, and I used to go to a lot of public meetings and public hearings. And we frequently, I started my career at HPD in New York City. We would go to community meetings and about different topics, and your typical community-based organizations would be there, and they'd say, we've been around since the 1968 riots. Then there would be other people that say, well, this church has been in this community since the Civil War. So when you were looking for a vector of community change for someone to actually do community improvement, we would sometimes be overlooking churches, even though they've been in the community, again, sometimes since the Civil War. They've been in this neighborhood. So I'm very delighted to see that we are now, that conversation has changed. So when we go into communities to look for people to affect change in these neighborhoods, we're not overlooking churches anymore. So what we do at NHP Foundation is we think there's an alignment, first of all, of mission. You know, as a not-for-profit developer, we also make investments in affordable housing. We make investments in resident services, which are sort of focused on wealth creation and individual well-being. So there's some natural alignment of goals already between us as a developer and the church. Very often these conversations start with these partnerships, if you will. They start with a conversation. I want to point out in the room, Denzel Vaughn is here from Faith Gospel Assembly Baptist in Brooklyn, someone we're working with right now. And I think if you were to talk to him, he'd tell you our project started with a conversation, just to see if we were amenable to work together. And so it turns out, in us talking over these last couple years, that we found that we do have a basis to proceed. And you know, what we can offer him is some capital to get a project going. I think Pastor Vaughn will tell you that he very much is a 50-50 partner in this project, so that satisfies his community's, his congregation's goals as a co-developer. But you know, also, I think in terms of that conversation, what Pastor Vaughn has seen in his neighborhood is some very strong forces of gentrification, and him wanting to be able to contribute against that, to sort of say, we can build an affordable project here, which is going to sort of modify all the very strong forces of gentrification that are going on in my neighborhood. So again, how these partnerships principally start is a conversation. And it's a conversation to see if there's a basis to sort of work together. So right now I'm doing this in Brooklyn. We have a couple more engagements going on in Chicago, again with churches that are, one is 70 years old, one is over a century old. So these are very sort of staid presences in the communities where they exist.
But does it always make sense for a faith-based organization? I'm thinking about doing this to form a partnership. Have you seen those that succeed where people sort of do it on their own? They don't partner with other people? Or how important is a partnership to have a successful project?
Well, I think first and foremost, in terms of the NHP Foundation, if the faith-based community was wanting to engage to do market rate housing, we would not be an appropriate partner for that, because our mission is to do affordable housing. So there are some faith-based communities out there, my own church, that's sort of engaged a developer to do a market rate project. They have decided that they would rather take the proceeds from that deal and then apply it for their mission programs, as opposed to doing a project that sort of serves 30 or 40 people or 30 or 40 families as an affordable project. So there's different ways to do these projects. And of course, there are some times where we have a conversation and we decide there's not an alignment of mission, there's not an alignment of goals, and the NHP Foundation isn't the appropriate partner to sort of work with them.
How long do these processes last? If I'm an organization and I think I want to build affordable housing on property that I own, and that's my first thought, to the point where it actually opens and there's a family moving in, is there any time frame, any estimate at 2, 3, 10 years? What might that be?
I would say 2 to 3 years. There's a year of planning. There's 6 months of, getting to closing. Then there's another 18 months or more of construction. So these are, I think, when we sort of started out, these are long-term plays, I think Nathan said. These things don't happen overnight.
I think the other piece of that too, just to add on, is when you're involved in this is. I mean, I know we talk about from a religious standpoint of perpetuity and things of that, but this is a long time, right? I mean, you construct something, but you're part of it. There are regulatory requirements, there are affordability restrictions, depending on how long things are. I mean, you're in it for, at a minimum, 30 years. And so if this is a long-term mission for you, I mean, it can go on and on. So it's not, unless your model is get in, get the resources, and get out and reinvest it into however you want to reinvest it. If you're part of this transaction, you're a part of this transaction for the long haul.
So let's talk the financing, how we're going to make this happen. Let's go to the banker. Dave Walsh, you're with Chase Bank, and I'm a faith organization. I come to you. I have land. I've decided I want to develop it. How do I go about working with you to decide if I want to work with a nonprofit, for-profit, or, as they were even pointing out, decide, I don't want to do affordable housing. I want to do market-based. How do you make evaluations about which projects to fund?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, we do quite a bit of faith-based financed, and typically in a joint venture partnership in most cases. A lot of times it is someone if they have a site, they've either connected with the city or state and talked to them about their site and what they may be looking to do. Clearly, one of the things that we focus on is the capacity of the organization that's come through. I know the state and the city do as well. And have they done anything like this before? And from a partnership perspective, if they come through the door, to talk to us about financing any project, is the partner, have the capacity, and are they the right fit? And we don't tend to make recommendations, but in some cases we do, point out. Well, one of the things that we have seen, to your point, is about hiring the right counsel, hiring the right consultant to help you through the process, because it's not easy. Some of the other things that we really look for, that we focus on, is who's the contractor, who's going to build the building, who's going to manage it once it's up. Do they have familiarity with if it's affordable housing, do they have familiarity with the programs and how they work and how the lotteries work? We love to finance these types of projects because we find that most of these projects are true community-based type development, because the organization is so ingrained in the communities that are looking to develop them. They really understand what's needed. It's not another developer that's coming through the door saying, hey, I want to do this type of housing because that's what the city would like to see. It's really, we need senior housing. We want to put some supportive housing for some of the folks in the community. They structure the deal in a way that's really committed to the community that they serve. So, those are some of the key points for us as we come in. I mean, we've seen developers partner with both not-for-profit and for-profit developers, over the years. One of the challenges that has always been, a hot button that we have seen is the negotiation of the developer fee, typically, on a lot of these transactions, and the risk associated with the guarantees that are being put up. Some faith-based organizations have stronger financial statements than others, and they're able to partially guarantee, which we have found, actually allows for them to receive more of the developer fee proceeds at the end of the day. So it's an interesting dynamic, and we've seen them in all shapes and sizes.
Do you have a recommendation between for-profit and not-for-profit partners?
It's interesting. We usually leave that up to, obviously the faith-based institution, but I will say this. We're really spoiled in New York. We've got terrific government agency partners. We've got terrific accountants, attorneys, consultants. Unlike any other state that we work in, to be honest with you, we work in pretty much every one of them. And I think we've got a lot of mission-based. The more successful projects and the developments that we've seen is if somebody decides to work with a for-profit, we've got a lot of mission-based type for-profit developers in the market that had previously worked at not-for-profits, and we also see a lot of nonprofits that are partnering with a lot of the faith-based institutions as well. So it can be successful in both ways.
So you need to figure out now, or I need to figure out, I'm building this affordable housing. I need to figure out the accountancy issues. And Mike Greenwald, let me ask you, as I'm putting things together, what are some of the pitfalls or hurdles that I need to consider when I'm putting together an affordable housing project? Are there things that I could get in trouble even with my not-for-profit status as I'm building out this affordable housing? What do I need to be aware of?
Well, there are a lot of rules, and by the way, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming. We keep saying that. I don't know, maybe we want to stop. There are, and I would say when you're doing a project like this, it's not just talk to your accountant and then talk to your lawyer. It's a team. You're going to be working with, if you pick a not-for-profit development partner or a for-profit development partner, you need to have your advisors, and your advisors are a team. So you're going to need to have counsel you're going to need to have your accountant because there are a lot of tripwires. There are tripwires related to some very complicated rules about what not-for-profits can and can't do in order to make money. It has to be, if you're doing something that's not specifically aligned with your mission, you can wind up in a situation where you actually have created a taxable entity for yourself. So it's really critically important that as you're beginning the project, that you assemble a team of accountants who know these rules and lawyers who know these rules. It's very tempting and commendable to want to work with somebody in your congregation or maybe your sister's cousin's nephew. And that might well be the appropriate person to work with, but it will be only because they've done this before. It's like heart surgery. It's like anything else. You really, somebody's got to learn somewhere, but you really, if it's you, want the person who's done it 1,000 times. I will tell you that, if you're getting into a partnership, it's like a marriage. It's very easy to get into. It's very hard to get out of. The partnership agreement that you negotiate, is a contract, and so you really need good counsel. You need to evaluate not only the legal aspects of the contract, and Brian can talk about that, but the financial aspects of the contract, which is where we come in. Keeping your not-for-profit status, making sure you don't create what's called unrelated business taxable income. So there are, we can get deep in the weeds, but there are a lot of tripwires. So the critical thing is to assemble a team. And also to remember, as was said, you're going to be, unless you sell your land, which is a lot of faith-based organizations do. But if you want to be in the project because it means something to you, you're going to be in it for a long time. Make sure that you have leaders within your organization who are capable of leading that effort. It shouldn't necessarily fall to the pastor. It should be somebody within the organization who's dedicated to working on this. It's not a full-time job, but they have to be aware, they have to be knowledgeable. So that's also part of the team. Look within your organization and say, do I have the capability to be a partner in this project? Do I, other than my asset, what else do I bring to the table, and what else do I need to have, in the room to protect my interests? It's not just pastors who can go on and on.
Can you, I know you didn't want to get into the weeds, but can you give some examples, some pitfalls that, could get you into trouble? You could end up creating a for-profit entity or, action that could be taxed in a different way?
Sure. If you wind up in the condo sale the condo sale business, for example, you could very well wind up with something that's considered unrelated business taxable income, because now you're engaged in what would otherwise be a for-profit activity if you weren't a not-for-profit to begin with. The other thing I would like to caution is that these rules are evolving. Washington is very hungry for money. So they're looking at ways that they can make more money. One of the things that did not make it into the tax bill but was talked about was, for example, if you run a museum, and you have a gift shop. Right now, that's not a taxable activity, even though it's a business, because presumably you're just selling, pictures, postcards of the paintings and puzzles and things like that. There is some thought that says, well, maybe we don't want you doing that. And right now, if you had that gift shop and you were selling things that were unrelated to the museum, it would be taxable. So, be very careful to stay on top of these rules related to unrelated business taxable income. I would say that that's the biggest potential pitfall. The second is not so much a tax aspect, but an economic aspect. As we said, these are contracts between you and whoever the developer is. There are fees involved. Because of the changes in the tax law, a lot of developers are changing the way they take fees. The form that they take is going less from actual developer fees or management fees to wanting to get so-called carried interest, so that to the extent that there's a refinancing or a sale down the road, they can get capital gain treatments. You say, well, these things don't affect me. They do, because ultimately the shifting in these economics from the types of fees, particularly if you're dealing with a for-profit developer, the shifting economics change what economic return your organization is going to get out of the project. And while you may be doing this because it's good for the community and you feel a mission to do it, there's also an economic imperative. You're taking an asset that you own and you're putting it to work, and somebody's making money on it, and that part of that somebody should be you.
Brian and Mike, you may have some comments on this as well too. I'm now trying to pencil out this whole project, trying to figure out how I can make it work. And one of the places I want to look at are all the different state and city and federal programs, tax breaks, in particular the low-income housing tax credit, things like maybe the historic tax credit or the new markets tax credit. There's so many different types that are out there. I'm wondering, how have the recent changes in the tax law affected some of those credits that are available to build affordable housing?
They always save the attorneys for last, so I'll try not to bore you. So certainly the Trump tax reform, some people are calling it, has affected affordable housing, especially in New York. The 4% tax credit is worth less, and certainly 9% as well. And it has affected the ability for developers to generate enough equity to do the project. There are more gaps, and because of that, the developer will need to come up with more money, or the city or state will have to come up with additional subsidy to finance those projects. So what we're seeing is developers being more creative in terms of financing those gaps, the city trying to fund those gaps by delaying some projects that weren't otherwise in the pipeline. So it's a real problem, but again, we've seen these kind of issues before with the 2007 kind of recession. So, and we've gone through that, and we've built housing during that time period, and we're stronger now than we were before. And so, we as a collective group, in terms of all the people in the industry, I think we're pretty confident that we can still ride this wave out.
Are entities interested in buying the credits?
Yeah, I think, yeah, certainly there are still investors out there. Typically, it's banks and larger corporations that are buying the credits. I just think that there's an estimate out there that it's 5 to 10% lower in terms of pricing per credit than it was previously. So it just creates more gaps.
Yeah, what Brian's referring to is that since these are corporate buyers of these tax credits, and their tax rate went from 35% at the top to now 21%. They're willing to pay less for each dollar of credit because it's worth a little bit less to them. But there's other opportunities in the new tax law. One of the things that we're excited about, we don't know yet how it's going to work, is the opportunity zone. And what the opportunity zone does is enable a taxable developer to be able to come into a locality that's been officially designated by the state and then recognized by the IRS as being an opportunity zone. They're typically lower income areas, which is not a bad place to want to build housing. And what they get is if they hold that asset long enough, they don't have to pay any tax on the gain when it's sold. So that could be, if it lasts long enough, a huge incentive to bring for-profit developers in. We just don't know yet how it's going to work. It's too new. The zones haven't been designated. But that might make up a little bit for the reduced value of the tax credit.
Yeah, and there's also proposed legislation that would bifurcate the state tax credit from the federal tax credit, so that investors would be able to, or one investor would be able to buy the federal and another investor would buy the state. So that they claim that there'll be a 10% increase on the state because of that.
Right. And again, now, when you think about what you're now talking about, so now you got three parties at the table. You've got the faith-based organization that owns the land and wants to participate in the project. You've got the developer, whether that's a for-profit or a not-for-profit developer, and now you got the tax credit buyer. So now you have a room full of about 40 or 50 lawyers and accountants who are all sitting there. I will tell you a story. I actually participated in the first sale of low-income housing tax credits. It was right after the act passed in '86, and nobody knew what they were doing, and we literally nobody had done it before. We didn't know how to price it. the buyer had never bought real estate before, they'd only done equipment leases. We literally had so many lawyers and accountants in the room that we had to break up into subcommittees. You know, it's not that bad anymore. But remember, this is now the world that you're getting into. That you are going to participate in a long-term project that has significant legal, accounting, and financial aspects to it. You're going to be at the table. You want your team of advisors to be as strong as everybody else's, because remember, the tax credit buyer, they've been through this before. There's very few first-time tax credit buyers. It's usually the same players. The developers have been through this before. So their advisors are all experienced at this process, and they know what they want to get out of it, and they know how to get it. You, especially if it's your first time, want a team of advisors who've been through this before, so that you get what you want out of the deal as well.
Yeah, and the best part from a faith-based organization is you own the land, you control the path forward from the beginning. Until you sign that first document where you say, here's our development agreement and here's what we're going to do, you control the process. So if you have the right team and advisors with you, you can steer your project the best way that you want it to be steered. And so it's important that you develop that team, like everyone's saying up here, so you know the pitfalls and the challenges up front, and you can negotiate the best deal for yourself.
Richard, do you want to add something?
Yeah. For those in the audience where your eyes might be glazing over a bit, right? Think of it this way. I just wrote 3 things down, and in the office we could develop it further. What do you need to know if you're a pastor, a leader, a faith-based leader sitting here? 1, you must know the value of your land, and that value cannot come from the developer. So you are to go to various sources, if that means calling one of the biggies, whatever the case may be in terms of whatever real estate firm, you must get an accurate valuation. That's first. Then there's another term now that unfortunately there's no way around. You must determine your buildable square foot. How big can you build? So that means you're engaging the services, whether it's my firm or several other firms. You must know how big you can build. And then number 3 is you must then figure out what is your wish list. What do you want? Are you looking for right now we've got a project where the current church average Sunday attendance is about 20 to 30 persons, and the pastor has asked for a sanctuary for 1,000 persons. And now, unfortunately, you can chuckle. I'm sitting across from him. I can't chuckle. So I have to show just as much respect and try to walk him back to say, can we scale that back just a tad? Or there's another project in Harlem where the buildable is about 55,000 square feet. The church has come up with a plan for 38,000 square feet of the 55. And our job is to walk that back and say, listen, no one's going to touch this because we've got to do something that makes sense. So if you're thinking of 3 things that you're sitting here, what do you do first? 1, get a value of the land. 2, determine your buildable square footage. And 3, start developing a wish list so that when you meet with the 6 to 10 developers, you are presenting something and not just having them dictate what they feel the best terms are for you.
To follow up on that, what do you think are the hallmarks of a successful faith-based affordable housing joint venture and one that is unsuccessful?
As I alluded to earlier, I'm a little bit biased as a minister. I don't like deals where the church becomes the tenant. And I understand that it's done, and with all due respect to everyone here who have done those, that's not my preference. We've actually walked away from those deals. We prefer a deal where there's a joint venture, there's a condo split, the church remains an owner in the deal. And then there's some equitable distribution of the developer fee. There's another, I know I'm not just picking on the local attorneys, but if we go by the analogy of the brother, sisters, cousins, friend, there's a deal that was done where the developer fee was never mentioned or not part of the deal because the attorney didn't know. And so the JV was executed with the developer getting it was not even included. Now, of course, it got caught at the Attorney General, but the reality is it got past a lot of controls because they didn't have the right attorney. So to answer the question, it's getting the right legal representation and seeing if you can get some deal where you maintain some form of ownership forever, in perpetuity.
Brian, back to that legal question, what should a faith-based institution consider when they're drawing up a partnership?
First, Richard, our retainer is a couple more bucks than 250, so you could use us if you want. Before I answer that question, though, so Richard brings up a great point in terms of ownership going forward. Some of the more successful projects that we've seen is what Richard is describing, where the faith-based organization sells their land for real value, real consideration that is shown by a scientific appraisal with hopefully potential multiple offers as well to back that up on the market. And then the parties agree that the church would receive a condo back for a nominal amount, and they whether they agree to a vanilla box or a completed structure including a rectory and pews is up to the negotiation. But if whatever they agree to, that money is held in escrow and that cash is held in escrow with some additional security, whether an LC, a payment performance bond, or something, and so that you secure the eventual church space that you're going to build hopefully in 2 years. So in terms of the JV, there are multiple issues that go into a successful JV partnership. I mean, with any contract, any deal, what does it cost to get in? What are your liabilities during that partnership? How do you get out? And what do you get out of the whole partnership? So there's multitude of issues that go into it, and it's just about managing expectations and having those conversations up front that we find is the most important.
Kareem, you sort of straddle both sides of the aisle. You're a pastor at a church, but you also have a direct involvement in this world of affordable housing and faith-based affordable housing. What do you think people should know as you see it sort of from both sides?
Well, I agree with the gentleman just said at the end. Number one, knowing the value of the property, I think, is key, and knowing the buildable square footage. But I would also add, I know we're talking about housing, but you know the buildable square footage of commercial space and residential. Because if you're a faith organization, it may be part of your mission to do something in addition to housing. You may be a community center, it may be expanding the church, et cetera. So know the square footage of both of those two things. And then as well, what you can build as of right. I know as a developer may have a vision of building something down the road, but you need to be aware of that. If you're selling property and they want to get a variance or something else to build more there, that's something you should be aware of, because that can change the time frame of what you're trying to do. The other thing is that I know that we've used the term for-profit developer and not-for-profit. But I would just say those are legal designations. That's just a matter of whether, as a nonprofit, of course, an individual cannot get any additional revenue as part of their salary. It has to go back to the organization. But we think that for-profit is always bad. Nonprofit is good. And we've seen a lot of quote-unquote nonprofit developers that have taken advantage of faith leaders as well. And because they're nonprofit and we want to build affordable housing, and we've worked with churches in the past, that doesn't mean that they're always acting in good faith. So whoever you're working with, make sure you vet the nonprofit just as you would vet the for-profit, and find other people that have worked with them, ask for references, and try to find out as much as you can about what they've done in the community. Again, it always goes back to, sound simple, but the best way to determine what somebody is going to do is to figure out what they've done already. And so if they've not been good actors before and you find out they've not worked well with churches, don't think that you're the magical church that all of a sudden they're going to start doing great things. So please make sure you vet any organization, in addition to having counsel. I don't think we can say that enough. I think just about everyone agrees. Make sure you have appropriate, trained legal counsel. It was also said, and we can't say this enough, we've seen this a lot, where there's a relative in the church who's an attorney who does not know the complexity of housing law, who's representing them, and you can still get taken advantage of. Just because you're an attorney doesn't mean this is your expertise.
I want to ask one final question. I sort of open it up to the panel to see who wants to take it, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. But one of the biggest issues, of course, in the city when we talk about affordable housing and gentrification is this question of income inequality. And this is something that a lot of faith-based organizations are really focused on and thinking about. And how do you balance wanting to take advantage, as it were, of rising prices and sell land or build affordable housing, yet you yourself could end up being a contributor to some of this issue of gentrification and rising income inequality, even if you're building affordable housing in your community? I don't know who wants to take the question, but it's one that I've been thinking about as we've been talking here.
I would take it. I mean, having, I think, dealt with this in two cities, right? I mean, I think one of the best things that we do in our industry is we create affordable housing, we transform neighborhoods. But also what we do when we transform neighborhoods is we introduce additionals. We preserve opportunities for the people that we serve, but we also invite new people into those communities. So there is kind of a positive and an adverse effect that happens with that. So it is a balance. I think as people begin to kind of think through what they want to do and what kind of mission they want to execute, or how this execution of the real estate best serves their mission, is trying to figure out, what are the services? We do housing. We were just talking about this over the last couple of days in HPD. I mean, this is community development at the end of the day. Housing is one block of that. And so nonprofits, CDCs that have come out of the faith base, I mean, this is started, and a lot of folks have started out in this business for equality, for change. And so I think it is trying to make sure that we kind of balance things in a way that makes sense, not only in housing, not only in community development or community facility space and things that we introduce and that serve not only our best interests, no matter where you sit at the table, but the community as a whole. And also opportunities that it provides for retail, for schools, for other things. So it's a balancing act. We talk about it all the time. I mean, we've done a lot of deals in the Bronx. We transformed the Bronx. What is the issue that we deal with in the Bronx? Acquisition cost is high. It's like, well, we created that market, right? So, I mean, we're victims of our own success in that regard, and so we have to really kind of deal with that.
Please.
Yeah, I think, so this is another thing. This is me speaking as a faith leader. I think that any faith leader, if you're looking at the best interests of that community, then you have to define what affordability is. Because it's such a broad definition. The AMI, the current definition, excuse me, but it's BS. It's too broad. You have, when it's defined by congressional district, you have Brownsville and Park Slope in the same congressional district. And how can you define, it has to be a much narrow definition about people who live in the neighborhood where your congregation is. And there are scenarios where you can have a more appropriate definition for that local area, and you can still make a profit. Doesn't mean you can't, but it can be a balanced ratio. Most of the ones that we've done over the last several years, 80-20, 80% market rate, 20%, affordable, BS. Because the 20% affordable, it's still not affordable to most people who live in that area. So if you own the land, you can call the shots. You're the one who owns it, and don't let the developer bully you into it. I'm speaking as a faith leader. I took off my government hat for this moment. I'm sorry. Okay? That you can say, I own the land, and I want to find out how can we maximize development. We still want to generate revenue for our congregation, but we also want to protect people who live in the neighborhood currently.
So are there some questions from the audience? We'll take a...
It's for the videotaping.
One to Mike, and I'll get two questions in here. On the value of the land, the appraisal, can air rights, or should they be included in the value of the appraisal? Absolutely. That's one. Second question, on the discounted percentage, the value of 4% and 9%. We can't necessarily wait for the legislation. So Kareem, since you've got more money in the pot now, is the governor willing to put more money up to help us to bridge this gap with the value of 4% or 9%?
Well, I can't commit the governor to something right now, but I want to follow up with you. I want to talk about that, all right? Anything policy related and going forward, I can tell you what's going on now, but I'd love to get your card, give you mine, and we stay in touch about any policy changes, all right?
And on the air rights question?
I'll answer the air rights question. So we haven't really talked about it, but there's another player that's not on this panel, is the Attorney General, and they're going to have a say in most likely in the transaction, because most of the faith-based organizations are set up under religious corporation law, which will require AG consent on a transfer or a mortgage, and even a lease over 5 years. So when they're looking at your transaction, if you do have a JV structure where you're going to get something back after your sale, they're going to want to see not only an as-is appraisal, but an as-complete appraisal, which will be probably including the air rights development. So that is a part of the transaction.
For us, for the
That's going to be more than your as-is, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's what you should be arguing for. And when you're dealing with a developer, sure, yeah, 100%.
We have another question right here.
Hi, good morning. Lawrence Hammond from Community Preservation Corp. Excellent panel, array of professionals that are here. I think one question that needs to be raised in terms of just bringing together all the various disciplines is the role of the development consultant and the vetting process thereby. I know HPD has a qualified list of individuals as well as many others, but if someone can just speak to, the importance of a development consultant that helps to bring together all the various pieces.
I would say, I mean, you have to view this as it is like dating, right? The person that you date kind of complements you, right? So if you have flaws, they should be perfect in that area. And so, that talks about my dating life, I guess. But I think I am very key on, I have worked for both HUD and I've worked for city governments. And so your post-governmental dream is to always kind of consult, right? And so I always tell people that your consultant needs to be, I mean, they need to know how the process really works, but they have to be a good consultant. Just because you work for the city didn't make you a good employee. Just because you work for the feds didn't make you a good employee. A lot of you know those individuals. But I think...
Names.
Just keeping it real. But the consultants, and there's a lot of consultants in this room, and you guys are good with me. But it is important to understand, to work with people who understand how the process goes, where to push, where not to push. And one of the important pieces where your consultant will help you is people were talking about the negotiation, where we spent a lot of time in our office is unpacking the negotiations that happen between the developer and the church. So yes, you have grandiose dreams about a lot of things, but you have to finance this at the end of the day. And so sometimes we say, I don't know what they were thinking when they were negotiating this. So, and you have to unwind some things. And so a development consultant will be able to help you do that. But I would ask the general question, what is your experience level dealing with this agency or dealing with this funding source and how to navigate it? How many deals have you closed? Because again, some people will say, I'll help you do that. And I know the right people to talk to. And it's like, I mean, you might, but at the end of the day, they have to understand how things work.
And I would just add to that, if you are a religious organization looking out to potentially partner, look for a developer who's going to build your capacity. When your project is finished, they should take you along for the ride. If they're just showing up to have you sign papers, I don't think that's really a build capacity relationship. Ideally, what we try to do with the affiliate program is leave churches in a better position managerially, financially, so that you can help your communities. And there are a lot of financial partners out there that are very interested in that as well. The Prudential Social Investment supports the NHP Foundation's joint ventures with religious organizations. So they've given us money specifically for these kinds of relationships to get these projects going. So there's money available to do this. And just look for a developer who really, ask them about capacity building. How are you going to build my staff? Are you going to cut me in on sort of when you go to talk to contractors so that we learn that language as well? So all these things are very important.
Mary Jane, I think at the table right there, yes, the woman.
Wait, at the table. Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. My name is Rachel from One Title, and I have a question about the streetscape and preservation, like retrofitting the existing religious building as opposed to a full tear down. And I know there's efficiency issues and things like that, but I was just wondering if someone could speak a little bit to, I think you can access different types of financing. Someone mentioned historic preservation, tax credits, and also when we talk about community preservation, I think about, if that building has been there since the Civil War, or if we have sort of these iconic historic structures in a building, what's the implication of tearing it down and creating something new? I think there's pros and cons there too. I was just wondering if someone could speak a little bit more to that angle.
It's a great question. As a trained architect also, that's fantastic. However, sometimes depending on how long the plant or the church has been in a state of disrepair, for lack of a better word, is it landmarked? If it landmarked, then that answers the question. But in many instances, unfortunately, the cost of restoring, along with building, let's say if you've got a cathedral that's not landmarked, but it's 40 feet high, then unfortunately you might be encroaching, and depending on the zoning, you might be encroaching on all of the available apartments, or most of it. So unfortunately, in many instances, the church has to come down and then be rebuilt to better suit the overall development. That's not always the case, but unfortunately, in many instances, that is the case. We're dealing with something in Flatbush Avenue. I just had a conference call last night with the pastor where we were hoping to try to do that, but we can't. And she just said it's just too much just to even keep it going. It's time to move on.
We can probably take 2 more questions. Mary Jane, it's up.
Oh, no.
Floor choice.
I don't want to choose for this. Hi, Ayana Wayner, City of New Rochelle. On the buildable square foot, I just want to throw in a potential other partner, which is your municipality's Department of Development, because we have a couple of churches that are being developed, and one of them, thankfully, the pastor was friendly with somebody who was also knowledgeable about what was happening in the city. We're undergoing a major redevelopment, and an issue with their project was that the developer wasn't sure that they'd be able to have some of the uses that it was becoming a problem, maybe what some of the uses that they could get and that how that affected parking. And they thankfully came into the city and found out that, we are very open to rezoning, actually had been previously rezoning that area. And when the church came in, we could give them additional information and have a conversation about what they were trying to do. And it opened up some potential rezoning that, will definitely help their project and might not have been on the table had they not come in. And then a question that I had is another issue that has come up from faith-based institutions when they're looking to build is often they have their own constituency and congregation that they are looking to have housing for. So in lotteries, how does that work if there are, if they're looking to build housing for their particular congregation?
I think that, that's always the tricky piece. That's the hard part. I think we've all kind of experienced that. Like, you get far down the road and it's like, I want to build for this and I want to serve. It's like, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. We have a greater, there are kind of varying levels of degree to this. For city resources, we implement a lottery. That is 100% how that is going to be. If you enjoyed it before, it is not going to be that way going forward. There are community preferences. There are things that you can, there are community preferences that can happen, but, many congregation members may not live in that community, So there are just varying degrees to it. So it's not something, if you go into it thinking that I'll be able to serve 100% of my congregation, you're going to be sadly disappointed unless your congregation, you're not going to be able to support 100% of your congregation. Maybe some members that live in the community and how that preference goes, but generally it's going to be a much broader array of people, which can include members of the congregation.
Dick, I think you have the final question.
At NHP Foundation, we have a motto, more than a roof. It's just not enough to build safe, clean, affordable housing without improving the lives of the residents. And I haven't really, it's been hinted at, but I haven't heard anybody really talk about the importance of resident services to the whole development process that a faith-based organization needs to look at. And that's often something that the developer can't get money for and funds out of his own pocket. So very often that gets cast aside in the process. And how do you look at that, and how is that important?
I would say, I'm answering a lot of questions for a guy who's only been here 6 months, but
That's what we do to new.
Yeah, bring it on. So there are a lot of different resources to help support various populations, both at the city and the state level. And so depending on who you are trying to serve, I would say, obviously for seniors or for homeless, individuals or formerly homeless individuals, which are, something that we emphasize as part of our term sheet. We talk about light touch residential services or on-site services being provided. There's resources that are provided by HPD. There are city resources through HRA. There are a number of different things. ECI Award is another thing through the state. So there are a number of different services out there. We work to make sure that people are connected to that, because I mean that's where a lot of deals go wrong, right? I mean, you do build this housing, it's great. You want to serve this population, and that's a vulnerable population, and that is noble. But if it's not the service, if you don't have the services there to help meet their needs, it can become very disruptive in not only the building itself, but the community as a whole, where people are a little apprehensive to that. So we work diligently to connect individuals with those services, both at the city and the state level.
The other way of handling that is two ways. One is force the developer through the budget line to have a social service reserve, and also above the line on your net cash flows to have certain money funded for that on an ongoing basis. So that's another way of handling it.
And it also may be necessary to bring in other community groups. Maybe it's part of your mission to provide this housing, but you're not capable of providing those services. So there may be other groups within your community, other social service agencies, things like that you may want to partner with. Now you got somebody else at the table with their needs, wants, and desires, but it can be done, and it's done all the time. So,
I think that's why it's really important to know what you can build, because if you can build commercial space. The whole thing about gentrification has not just been individuals or families, but it's also been nonprofit organizations. And so your contribution may be space for a nonprofit that provides a service that those people in the building need. So I think it's critical to know the commercial space you have in addition to the residential space.
Well, I just want to thank Nathan, the Reverend Kareem Kamara, Nathan Sims, Richard Andrew Smith, Jamie Smar, Dave Walsh, Brian Hsu, and Mike Greenwald for being on the panel. Thank you. I know there were a lot more questions in the audience. If you have questions, you can email, I believe it's on the invite, but to just say it again, NHPF, that's National Hotel, NHPF, no, just giving, no, I'm just trying to give the call signs, the NHPF at nhpfoundation.org. You can send them an email, and they will be happy to try and get an answer for you. There'll also be some time after this that you can come up and talk to some of the panelists if you have any more questions. And with that, I will bring Dick back up to the microphone, and thank you again.
Thank you, Charlie. Great job by all the panelists. What I took away is the three most important things to know when you're choosing a partner. Number one, what is their mission? Can you see yourself aligned with this organization? Number two, what is the partner's intent? I mean, that's something that doesn't get enough attention. Are there goals to maximize fees in construction and property management? Are they trying to do the greater good? Are they strictly profit-driven? All of these things have to be sorted out. And three, what is their experience and track record? And that's critical, and that came up with a lot of people. I really want to thank you all for coming to this gathering. I found it instructive, and I hope the rest of you have. And rather than have it end right now, please stay and network a while and speak to our panelists so you can get more out of it. Thank you again very much.